Everyone, we're back for another week of PGA DFS. Sorry I wasn't able to really put up a video last week because I was back home visiting my old college buddies, back out on a lake in Ohio, drinking a lot of beer, and I was in no condition to do any golf research last week. And it being a no-cut event, I played it really light, and it showed in my results. I had a really shitty week. I'm really glad I didn't try to give really any advice last week because it was awful. Um, I did have a lot of Paul Casey, which was good. I did not have really any Hideki. Just I played small, so he wasn't really on my radar of guys that I really wanted to tune in on. Um, you can tell I didn't do much research because I'm having trouble recalling who I even played. Um, I didn't have any I didn't have much ZJ. I didn't have a Decky. I had some Spieth, but not much. I had a lot of Ricky, and he did all right. I had some Leishman. He sucked. I had a lot of Henley because I thought he was too cheap, and he's been consistent. He just sucked, so that wasn't great. But yeah, it's a new week, so we're gonna get into it here. Got the spreadsheet rolling again this week. And so over here is my course history: 2016 to 2012, 2011 to 2007, 2006, 2004. So that's basically how long that anyone in this field has played at Quail Hollow. Um, at least anyone relevant in this field, I should say. So, you know, if the box is blacked out, that means there's no course history there, and I just don't want to have, slash marks indicating that they didn't play. An X is a missed cut, which I'm sure you may have gathered by now. And the rest would be their finishes in those corresponding years chronologically. Going through, I have updated odds. Your books may be different, but I kind of went to Odds Checker and just kind of figured out a relative average of where they are. I mean, some sites have Rory at 6, some have Rory at 8, some have Rory at 13 to 2. Some sites have Hideki at 10, some have Hideki at 12, some have Hideki at 14. Most have him at either 10, 12, or 14. I'll go with 12. It's if odds are the only way you're making your picks, you're probably not doing well anyway. Some guys are traps, like Patty Harrington at the Open. I mean, he only missed the cut by a stroke, but not really my point. My point is that, if you get caught up into strictly odds value without looking deeper, I mean, sometimes the odds makers have something out there for a reason. I think, they want you to take that number. But this week I've seen a lot of guys be bet really far down, like half of what their odds were, less than 2 weeks ago. So that means that I think the community in general has a really good feel for this tournament. I think a lot of guys are going to be very chalky with good reason, and you can kind of tell from these tee to green numbers in the last 12 rounds that the guys that are trending up are pretty far to the top. There's not much glaring. I mean, so as with any major, you have to price these guys apart, right? So the 7K range is pretty strong compared to most weeks. I mean, 2 weeks ago, Canadian, I remember I was, all in Chad Campbell, all in Ches Reavie, James Hahn, Kevin Tway, play these guys, Ollie, let's go. These are the players of the week. These are the guys you want. And it's kind of the same this week, but I mean, instead of paying 10 something for Charlie Hoffman at the Canadian, I'm paying 7,600 for him. So, this is the kind of field that we have here. It's the fourth major of the year. This is what we're looking. Big tournaments out there. Best of luck to everyone. But yeah, so I'm trying not. It's tough with a lot of guys that don't have either great course history and very, very good form, and like no course history, but fit here well. It's those kind of guys that I'm, you know, not sure where I want to lean on them this week. I mean, so we'll get into it, but looking at the key stats I have across the top, I have tee to green last 12. Tee to green is pretty much the key here. Putting is helpful, obviously. I mean, every week you're going to find guys at the top of the leaderboard that are just on fire with their putter. I mean, and when you think about it, if you miss a putt an inch to the right, that's an inch away from another stroke off your score, and that's simply what it comes down to. So I give an example: Gary Woodland at the Canadian Open. I'm pretty sure he led the field tee to green, but he lost something like 4 to 6 strokes. It was bad with his putter. If he doesn't lose 4 to 6 strokes with his putter, Gary Woodland wins the Canadian Open. And that is huge. He finished 4th. There's nothing to take away from him there. But the difference between finishing 4th and winning a tournament was his putter. And that's kind of something that I want to drive home, is that tee to green is great and putting is volatile. You want your guy to be killing it tee to green, and the putting can get hot. And some of these guys, so before I get into the putting stat, in terms of what's in the sheet, I have it only for last 24 rounds of Bermuda. With putting, I don't like to use last 12 rounds recorded because putting can be volatile, and I don't want one really hot putting week to influence something that is generally negative, and I don't want something that is super negative to influence something that is generally positive. Justin Thomas would be a good example of this. Last week he putted really poorly, but they weren't on Bermuda greens, and these are Bermuda greens, so I want to look at only Bermuda in terms of what I'm looking at strokes gained putting. And a lot of these guys you kind of, or at least I kind of know whether or not they are good putters or whether or not they're generally shitty putters. So, like Jordan Spieth, I would not be crazy to say he's the best putter in the world. I think that's kind of a consensus. But he's only 45th in strokes gained putting on Bermuda in his last 24 rounds. Am I going to look too heavily into that? No. I mean, he's had practice rounds on these greens. They play really fast, so maybe that normalizes things. Maybe that gives an advantage to the better putters. I'm pretty sure the jury's still out on that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of that's my take on, putting on really difficult, fast greens. But this is Quail Hollow, where we're playing this week. It's a very long course. You're going to have a lot of approaches of 200 plus. That is the main approach distance. I shouldn't say main approach distance, but a lot of these holes have dog legs. You need to shape your shots. And the distance from 200 plus is pretty important for these guys. Or at least it shows up as the most important distance as to where these guys will finish. The majority of the par 3s are 175 to 200 or around those ranges, within like 5 yards. The majority of the par 4s are 450 to 500. As I said, they are long. If you have a guy that's hitting a driver 280, guess what? You have 220 left if it's a 500-yard hole. So these approaches over 200 yards are going to be key. These fairways are very difficult to hit, so guys may not be crushing driver as much if they're long. So that's another thing to keep in mind, but I wouldn't focus on it too heavily. And then par 5 scoring 550 to 600 yards. That's where a majority of the par 5s are on this course. They're very long par 5s. It's a very long course. And I should mention, it's been raining like cats and dogs down there in North Carolina. It's going to be wet, which is going to favor distance, you would think, because, I mean, if you've ever played golf on a wet course, like, I've hit driver before where, it goes and it will embed in the fairway. and you get no roll. So roll is obviously a big part of how driving distance is measured. It's not measured from where it lands. It's not a baseball. It's when a guy hits a home run in baseball. It's not, oh well, it rolled to 550 feet. It doesn't work like that. This is different. This is where it rolls to. So water going to slow down the ball on the roll. It's going to embed in the fairway a little bit. On the flip side, it's going to also embed in the greens a little more, which kind of plays to how these guys hit approach shots a little bit. Guys with high ball flight might benefit a little bit from softer greens, but I'm not going to read into that too much. If you followed my advice for the Open, I said that ball flight is not an important thing, and I don't think it was in that tournament either. But yeah, so off the tee is big here, especially for the guys that finish up to the top. Guys like Zach Johnson, who I'll get to later, who I love this week actually, but he's not a long hitter. He's an accurate hitter, but he's not a long hitter. And where Zach Johnson succeeds on this course is by getting the ball to the hole and not making mistakes. He's very good at that. He gets the ball to the hole, and he's a phenomenal putter. So what Zach Johnson does here is he doesn't go in the trees on these narrow fairways. He doesn't fuck up. He gets the ball to where it needs to be, and he's good. He's good to go. But he can still gain strokes off the tee by not screwing up. That's another thing that is important here. So approach shots always important. If you can't get the ball on the green in 2, it's going to be very hard for you to hit birdies. You're going to have to go Hideki at Bridgestone and chip in for eagle. And God, that was crazy. I watched that live and I said, holy shit, Hideki's going to go on a roll here. And he did. But anyway, around the green, not super important. That's why I don't have it in bold. Strokes gained putting, not super important, but, guys that are terrible putters, just kind of know that they're going to frustrate you at times. That's what terrible putters do. Driving distance, it's going to be important, a little more so than accuracy. It's going to be easier for these guys that can hit the ball a mile to score on these holes. It's going to be easier for them overall, especially in the range. That's the only reason I really included it. And then for these guys that have red numbers or play on the Euro Tour, they're going to have their Euro Tour stats. So a guy like, I'm pretty sure Alex Noren doesn't have enough numbers, but I had these numbers in red, and then I changed them because the proximity numbers were going in red too, but whatever, don't worry about that. But the red numbers are the Euro Tour numbers. So a guy like Grace, he's longer on the Euro Tour. It could be the way they measure it, because most of these guys seem to be longer on the Euro Tour than they are on the PGA Tour. Could be the courses. It could be a lot of things. I don't really know what it is, but either way, nobody besides Grace has a huge, and I guess Charles does too, but Charles is still long on both tours. But there's the stats for you, and then we're going to get into it here. So at the top, odds-wise, I'll sort it by DK salary just because that's where most people play. Yeah. So Spieth is at the top in DK salary. I think he's going to go relatively under-owned compared to, his overall chances to win this tournament. If Rory's at 7 and Spieth is at 9, I know everyone thinks Rory's the easy front runner to win, but Spieth has a lot of motivation here. He has a career Grand Slam on the line. He can get it now, and he can get it at a course where he's a 32nd before, but that was a while ago. When he wasn't necessarily a world-class player. He was obviously a world-class talent, but I don't think he developed everything in his game to the point it is now. Especially mentally, like you saw at the Open, his head game is. I'm not going to finish that sentence. His mental game is strong. Tee to green, last 12, first. And by the way, these stats are only for PGA Tour events that have the shot link data. So, like the Open, no data. U.S. Open, no data. Euro Tour events, no data. So, if you see a guy that has good finishes in those tournaments, that's obviously going to mean something. I wouldn't overlook it. The problem is you don't know why they did that in that tournament. And that's not a big deal. Obviously, you want your guy to get, across the finish line no matter how he has to do it. But you kind of do want to know why. If a guy's been spraying his driver everywhere in the last, 12 rounds consistently, but he found something at the Open, maybe that matters to you. But yeah, moving on. Spieth, top of the DK salary list again, like I said. Second in odds to Rory, which honestly seems appropriate. But leading tee to green, his concern is off the tee. He's been spraying a little bit recently, which I think could hurt him here. But his approach game is, grade A. Around the green, short game, he's mint. He just doesn't hit the ball a mile. Doesn't need to. Problem is, proximity 200 plus has been great, but he's such a good putter that maybe he can get around that. I don't think he wins this week, but I definitely see him being in contention. A top 20 seems safe for me. I don't really see him not doing that well. And given the chalkiness that will be Rory, I think he's worth a shot in GPPs. But at the same time, if you're paying for Spieth, you're probably not paying for Rory, and you really want Spieth to outscore Rory. The problem is I don't see that happening. Like, as much as I know that Spieth is the best golfer in the world right now, I don't see it happening. It's like taking Giancarlo Stanton against Clayton Kershaw. Would you take Bryce Harper against Vance Worley? That's an example from tonight. I'm not sure how that worked out for Harper, but the matchup is right. And the matchup here is right for Rory. He is the odds-on favorite, 7-1. Off the tee gains the most strokes. Tee to green, still fine, 17th in the field. His approach game has been a little weak, but I think most of that has been his short irons because his proximity from 200 plus is 6th in the field. His driving distance is first in the field over the last 12 rounds, or season long, excuse me. I used season long for this just so I could put it in before last week's stats came in. But yeah, driving distance isn't going to change that much too. It's also it's a driver measured stat, so it doesn't depend on how you're hitting your irons on a certain week. But yeah, he's still crushing par 4s in the range we want and par 5s in the range we want. And the kicker, Rory has, besides one missed cut back in 2011, Rory has not finished worse than 10th at Quail Hollow. Now, I will say that some significant changes, possibly insignificant, we'll find out, but they've been made to the course since last year's tournament, but still, the majority of the holes in this course are the same, and some of the holes that have been changed have just been altered in minor ways. So I'm not really going to, I'm not going to not weigh course history. It's going to be around 1/3 to 1/4 of how much I weight a player this week. And then, so Rory, he's going to be the mega chalk, but I'm eating it, man. I'm eating that chalk all day. Just because I think his win equity is so high. He's not Kevin Na at what tournament was that? The Travelers? I forget, but God, that one sucked. Everyone played Kevin Na. Why? That one still confuses me. But yeah, Rory's gonna be the guy. He's gonna be the guy I think you want to have this week. And you see it all the time in GPPs, especially this year. You're gonna find some chalk that hits. That is the way it is. You're gonna find some chalk that doesn't hit. That's the way it is. But the key is at the top, I don't think Rory misses the cut. And if you get Rory in 20th, and you get Spieth in 25th, and you get DJ in, I feel like 2 or 3 of these studs are going to be at the top. It's going to be hard to find which ones they are, but I think Rory is one of them. And maybe Spieth finishes at the top, but I don't see him finishing above Rory. I mean, he could very easily, but it's tough. It's tough to say. These are 2 of the best in the game. Dustin Johnson, another guy that he will go underowned, but I don't see a reason that I need to be playing him this week. I mean, his course history honestly compares to Rory's. Or no, I'm looking at Fowler. DJ's course history, I mean, he hasn't played this course much, but he seems like a perfect fit. He's a bomber. We know he's one of the longest on tour. And my problem with him is he just hasn't been scoring well. I mean, he just hasn't been consistent. And he hasn't really been putting well. He hasn't been doing a lot of things well that I really would like to see. And obviously we know he can turn it on at any time. He hasn't won a major this year. He missed his opportunity at the Masters, U.S. Open. He had some family things going on, having his kid. British Open, another course that didn't really line up for him that well. This could be the one. But I don't see it happening for him right now. He just hasn't shown me what I need to see from him in order to really want to pay that for him. I mean, I think it goes lower than Spieth in ownership purposes, and that's saying a lot because Spieth is very high salary, and compared to DJ, that's, it's tough to swallow, but I'd rather pay up for Spieth. Going to Fowler. Fowler hasn't been great. Tee to green his last 12. Off the tee and approach, he's been a little iffy, but his putting has made up for a lot of it. All that being said, Fowler has great course history here. It was the site of his first PGA Tour win, just as it was for Rory's. So, interesting there. Rory's won twice here, actually, and a second. So, yeah, back to Rory. Man, I can't get enough Rory. But Fowler, if I'm playing Fowler, it's going to be on DK, and it's going to be paired with Hideki, probably. I think I'll play 2 cash lineups. My first will be with Rory, and then dropping down into the 8 and 7K ranges, and then my other cash lineup will be a Fowler-Hideki combo, probably. My problem is that I want to play Fowler and Hideki, and I don't want to make 3 cash lineups. I might, but I don't want to. So I'll have a Fowler Hideki lineup too, probably. But yeah, Fowler, he hasn't won a major yet in his career, and I don't see him turning into a Matt Kuchar, where he ends up 40-some years old without a major. I don't see that happening to him. He's still young. He's still got the power, but he hasn't been. So the thing is, he's been scoring well. I just don't know what his deal is recently in these tournaments. I think he has a great chance to go out and win. He's very motivated. We saw he came out at the U.S. Open firing on all cylinders. Definitely don't think he missed the cut. So that's another thing. Hideki. Hideki was a tank last week. I mean, honestly, just go look at his stats and be blown away. Watch his round and be blown away. I watched him play like 5 holes before I had to leave Pittsburgh last week, come back to my hometown. Absolutely dialed in. I don't think he had a putt over 15 feet in his final round. I mean, it was insane. Insane. And that shows with his recent tee to green approach, off the tee, around the green, putting. Hideki's never been a strong putter, but he's gonna hit the ball. And his major performances this year, I mean, he's been a great major performer this year. He's trending up at this course. There's no reason not to be on Hideki. Jason Day is going to go under-owned this week. His odds are falling. He got slightly injured at the Bridgestone, but still performed well. So, Jason Day, great course history here. He's not really a bomber per se, because when I use the term bomber, I tend to mean a guy that just hits the ball really far and then kind of struggles in most other areas of his game, but that's not Jason Day. Jason Day is great with his short game as well. It's honestly what's been carrying him most of this year. I mean, his approach game hasn't been great. But he's still been getting the job done, which is important. He's a 9th and a 22nd here, no missed cuts, but hasn't played it in 5 years. So in those two most recent times when I think the course has been most comparable to how it is now, he hasn't played. So that's a little worrisome. I'll probably have a little of Day in GPPs, but I don't want to be overweight, just because I really like Rory, Ricky, and Hideki. So I'm going to be overweight on those guys. Jon Rahm, interesting because he's never played this course. He kind of has blown up in majors in the past. And he honestly just hasn't been, like, killing it recently. I mean, he started out the season super hot, and I think he's cooled off a little bit. I still think he's a world-class golfer. He won the Irish Open a few weeks ago, but, you know, he's still a little young and inconsistent, and this is another major. But if there's a major with a course that's built for Jon Rahm hits the ball a mile. I wish he's played this course once in the past. I mean, you see the scoring stats, par 3s, par 4s, par 5s in the ranges we want. Jon Rahm is near the top in all of them. So I think Jon Rahm might go a little under-owned this week, just because Jon Rahm, he's priced up there, kind of, you know, where we're looking at a stud play. And I could pair some Ricky and Rahm, Ricky and Rahm, Hideki and Rahm. I think I'll take that route in GPPs. If you really want to get contrarian, I think you can go Day and Rahm, but I don't really see the reasoning. You know, I'd rather just, honestly, at that point, start with Rahm and play some of these 9K guys that'll go under-owned, these 8K guys. But besides that, yeah, I think the strategy will be pairing Ricky and Hideki with Rahm. Stenson, Henrik Stenson. Despite looking like he'd fit really well here, he just hasn't. Or not that he would fit really well here, excuse me, but that he would be able to contend here because of his long iron game. You know, but that's not really the case. He's been struggling with his short game and off the tee. He's been struggling with scoring on the holes we want. I mean, 4 missed cuts at an event for Henrik Stenson with no top finishes, that's fishy. You know, that shows me that there's something else, that this course just isn't built for him. Because you have to remember too, for course history, these are Wells Fargo Championship fields. These aren't PGA Championship fields. I mean, Henrik Stenson wasn't losing out to guys like, you know, the rest of this field, basically. He was losing out to guys like Robert Streb and Danny Lee consistently. So I'm not going to have any Henrik Stenson this week. He's going to be a full fade for me. Yeah, that's all I need to say on him. Sergio, I don't know what to think about Sergio. I think Sergio might be just kind of waiting for the Tour Championship playoffs to start because, I mean, his record here is great, but his record here is good, but not great. I mean, he's making the cut, but that's what we expect out of these studs. But he hasn't really, like, I mean, he had a second place, but that was way in 2005. Besides that, he hasn't really, like, come out here and won or got in the top 10, top 5. But, yeah, I mean, he's still Sergio. My thing is, he's already won a major this year. I don't know how hungry he is to go out there and win another. He just got married, so I feel like maybe he's, you know, the personal life is in a good place, but I think maybe it's in such a good place that he's just like, fuck it. We'll finish the year however we finish the year. Go out, you know, whatever. So there's that angle, but he's still a world-class golfer. The problem with Sergio is that I like Brooks Koepka a lot. I mean, if we're talking about guys that perform in majors, Brooks Koepka has performed the best in majors consistently over the last 2 years, which is insane because he only won his first major this year at the U.S. Open. But if you're looking at Aaron Hills, there are some differences between Aaron Hills and Quail Hollow. Number one, quite tight fairways. I mean, Brooks was getting away with just bombing it all over the place. Every hole, bombing it, and then going from there. I mean, Brooks was driving the ball like no other at Aaron Hills, and that really helped propel him to victory. The other thing about Brooks, though, is that he's a great putter. He's a great long iron player, and he's been very good at the ranges we want. So I'm gonna have a lot of Brooks this week. I think on FanDuel he's super underpriced. Him, Hideki, and Rory are the start to your cash lineup this week on FanDuel. There's no reason for them not to be. I mean, you could make the argument that you want to take, $800 savings and go with Ricky over Rory, but I think you're losing a lot of win equity there, and I'm not really ready to do that when $800 on FanDuel is the difference between Brendan Steele and Kevin Kisner, who I don't see as that far apart this week at all. In fact, I like Steele more than him. So there's that. Brooks, Brooks fits the mold here. His major performances have been stunning. 9,200 on DraftKings is all right. I think I would play him in a maybe start like a Rory Brooks or Ricky Brooks, Hideki Brooks, and then take a little more balanced approach. But I'm gonna have Rory in a lot of my lineups. I'm just gonna say that. Justin Rose is gonna be an easy fade for me. He's dealing with a back injury and is in relatively middling form. I mean, he's still making cuts, but he's not doing anything. And course history here is good, but he's injured right now, and that's the long and short of it. I'm just not going to be playing. You go out there and prove me wrong, but I think he's kind of dealing with something. Justin Thomas is another world-class talent, and I don't know what to make of him, man. He's a great player, but he's a little too inconsistent for my liking in cash, even at that FanDuel salary. It's FanDuel. Just if you price Justin Thomas at like $7,800, he would not be in my line. But $400 savings this week is making a difference with where I go in the lower range. If I lock, I'm locking in Rory, I'm locking in Brooks, I'm locking in Hideki up top. I got choices to make, so it's going to be hard for me to go with Justin Thomas over someone that's been in much more consistent form like Paul Casey. We'll get there. But yeah, miscut in the seventh here, that kind of reflects what I've been saying. He hasn't been scoring in the ranges that I want, and I think I'm just going to avoid Justin Thomas and hope he goes out there and blows it. And some people are taking his best friend Spieth won the Open, so Justin Thomas motivated to win. People took that angle with some of the Spanish guys at the U.S. Open too. It's whatever. You can take that angle all you want it, but I'm not going to buy it. Matt Kuchar doesn't fit this course well. God, this guy has to be burned out too, man. I'm just not going to be on Matt Kuchar at all this week. I hope people flock to him because he's, a weekly cash play, basically. But, just looking at him, 3 missed cuts here, 60th, 2nd, and a 70th. He's like Henrik Stenson, where we know what we're getting out of him. He's not a bomber. He's a very good player, but on shorter courses. This is not... Matt Kuchar can play on longer courses too, don't get me wrong, but this is not one of the longer courses that he's had success at. Whatever the reason for that is, I don't know, but when Matt Kuchar isn't succeeding somewhere, you tend to look at it. And Matt Kuchar, I think he's become a better player in the last 8 years, and, that could reflect in the course history if he's played it, but I feel like there's a reason he hasn't been playing this event, and it's probably because he knows it doesn't fit his game very well. So there's that, because Matt Kuchar plays every event, let's be honest. Adam Scott fits so well here, and the results kind of show. He had very good results back when he was a little younger, and now, still a 17th last year. That's what you like to see. 82nd, I feel like that was just a miscut. Fix that quick. Yeah. So, but Adam Scott is a great golfer. my only worry with him that is personally he could be a little distracted with his wife giving birth next week. He's already decided that he's not going to play in the Tour Championship playoffs first 2 weeks. Could motivate him to go out here and do really well this week as kind of a send-off, but I don't really see it for him. I don't really see that narrative playing out. I think you kind of play him as you would normally and go from there. My problem is that, 8,400 on FanDuel is a great price, but I keep ending up with the money for Brooks and the money for Hideki. If I was 200 short in a lineup that I loved, I would probably drop from Brooks to Scott. And I wouldn't really feel too bad about it. But it is what it is. I think Adam Scott's a great play on DraftKings at 8,600. He's clearly underpriced over there. So there's that. Phil Mickelson. This is going to be the course history versus recent form debate. Phil's not been in awful form, but he missed the cut at the Open, where Phil usually does really well at Open championships, and for him to miss the cut, with a terrible Friday round in weather that Zach Johnson shot a 66 in, come on, you can't be shooting 77s in there and be expecting to make the cut, Phil. It's not gonna happen. Problem is, Phil's underpriced again in a major because at this point, I don't think odds makers think Phil has a chance to win a major, and that is really driving his daily fantasy price down. The problem is Phil is still Phil, and so Phil raves about this course. Phil loves this course. He loves how you can shape your shots. He loves how you can get in trouble and get out of it easily. So I think you kind of just play him. It's like the Luke Donald at what's the Byron Nelson? Heritage? I think it's one of those two. But it's one of those places where Luke Donald owns the course. Doesn't matter his form. Goes out there, he competes. Zach Johnson at John Deere. Doesn't matter. Goes out there, competes. Steve Stricker. Dude could probably come back when he's 65 and top 5 at the John Deere. He's owns the place. So Phil, I think Phil's definitely in play here. He knows these greens. He knows his approaches here. He knows this course so well. He's played it every year from 2016 to 2004, and he's finished no worse than 35th. I mean, come on. If you're going to tell me that Phil misses the cut this week at this course where he has such strong course history, I wouldn't believe it. I'd have to see it to believe it. And watch Phil go burn me, but hey, if I'm pretty sure also this is Phil's 100th major appearance, which is insane. Phil's had a long career. I'm pretty sure it's his 100th major appearance. Which, what a way to... I'm sure he knows that too. What a way to celebrate your 100th major with a win. Hey, Narrative Street. But Phil does line up here pretty well. I mean, these fairways are really hard to hit, which I think means that a lot of people are going to just be missing them. But if there's any, Phil is great at getting out of trouble and putting himself in great places to succeed. He's great from 200 yards plus. He's great at putting on Bermuda, and the course history is elite to the point where, you can start a lineup Rory and Phil and just balance with, solid players in the 7K range, and you're going to be good to go. You can do the same with Scott, but Phil's course history just leads me a little more. Brandon Grace is a guy that just kind of performs all the time. Really hard to count this guy out of any major. He drives the ball well. He gets tee to green. Brandon Grace is a great player. He's a world-class player. He doesn't always get treated like one, but he really is one. I think he can do really well this week. I don't see him missing the cut. You can lock and load Brandon Grace in cash, GPPs, wherever you want him. I don't think he'll go very highly owned just because he's Brandon Grace, and people don't really see any sexiness with Brandon Grace. But he's a very consistent golfer, and he'll get the job done for you. I mean, you saw what he did at the Open. What a round. I mean, yeah, crazy. Leishman, very underpriced on FanDuel, but I don't like his current form. I know the stats line up well for him, but he hasn't done well in this course. Off the tee, he's really struggled in the past. So I'm going to fade Leishman this week and hope it doesn't bite me because Leishman could perform really well here. He's just been a little off the past 2 weeks, and I'm just not going to be on him that much. Or past 2 weeks, I forget how he performed at. Well, I know he didn't perform that well at the Bridgestone because I had a lot of him thinking that he would perform really well, bucking his course history trend. But I think Leishman's a guy that tends to perform well at the courses that he performed well at. He's like the Graham DeLay. Fleetwood is a guy that you make it chalk at the Open, and man, I feel like if you played Fleetwood, you honestly got lucky. Like, I think dude was like one shot away from missing the cut, and then just like went out there on the weekend in easier conditions and played his ass off and ended up like top 25 or something. I was so pissed about that because I wasn't going to buy the Fleetwood hype, and then he just weekended his way, Matt Kuchar weekended his way into a top 40 performance. So Fleetwood's in play, but not my favorite. I just never played this course. Struggles in the ranges that I'm looking at. He hasn't really. I mean, we know he can perform in top fields, but yeah, I don't really know about Fleetwood this week. I don't think he's an elite enough putter to get the job done like you will find with a guy like Brooks, who we know can putt. Noren, we know Noren's world class, but Noren doesn't perform well on American soil, and that's just one of those things that I don't know what it is about him. Maybe it just could be like the unfamiliar environment. I don't really know with him what it is, but hasn't performed well on American soil, and I think he's a little overpriced on FanDuel, and I think he's a little underpriced on DraftKings. But that said, enough about Noren. I love Paul Casey this week. I've heard in practice rounds Paul Casey is out there. He's not missing fairways and he's not missing greens, which is exactly what I want to hear at this course. That means that Paul Casey's getting the ball out there and he's getting it where it needs to be. So I love Paul Casey this week. He's so underpriced on on DraftKings. Excuse me. He should be in the Phil Mickelson, Adam Scott range, and he is not. It's a sin that he's this low. I'm gonna lock and load Paul Casey this week. His FanDuel price is a little more reasonable, but I think that when you look at the guys around him, you got Paul Casey at 40-1, 7,600. And you've got Justin Thomas, 7,400, 4,500. Paul Casey's still one of the best value plays in that range, if not the best value play in that range. There's Daniel Berger's another very good value play in the 7K range on FanDuel. If you want to go Rory, Hideki, Brooks, Casey, Berger. And, it's around 2:30 in the morning here on the East Coast. If you go with those guys as a starting five of your cash lineup, you're probably going to have to sacrifice some of these 6K guys that I think are really underpriced. But, I mean, the reason Berger on DraftKings too, like these four guys here, Casey, Berger, Hoffman, Peters, I'm going to have them as a core four in a lot of my lineups. And then from there, go up top and pick a guy, and then down a little lower, pick a guy, or maybe pick two higher guys. And pair them with those four, because those four guys I see doing really well this week. They're going to be chalky, but I think you can differentiate. Like, if you make a team of, Rahm and those guys, and then pair them with whoever fits salary-wise, you're going to be different, because I don't think Rahm's going to be as chalky as them. So that's a way to do things this week. Berger I love, though. I mean, just look at his stats recently. Approaching and 200 plus, he's dialed in, which means his overall approach game is just as good right now as that distance. He's not a bomber, but he'll get the ball out there. Putting, he's great. Little bit of spray recently, I think, is what's driving the off the tee down, but I'm not going to look into that too much. Around the green, he's a solid player. He's scoring in where we want him to, and he has very good history here. I love Berger this week. I think he has a chance to go win this thing and really show up here and set his foot down as a world-class player. I think he's a very good player right now, but I think he can make that next step in the next few years. Charlie Hoffman's a veteran. Hasn't done well at this course in the past, but right now his form is just so hard to ignore. He hasn't played this course in a while, so I think that's probably a good thing for him. He gets back there, fresh start, whatever you want to call it. He's crushing the par 4s and par 5s recently. He competed really well at the Bridgestone, another place that he hasn't really popped too much recently. So I think he can do the same again here this week. His game is dialed in, off the tee, approach, which is where you want. Ball striking is key here, and Charlie is dialed in. I'll have Charlie and cash on both sides. Gonna ride it. Been riding them for weeks. Now's the time, man. Put up or shut up. But Charlie Hoffman, one more thing. So he was one of my big fades at the Open, and he went out there and proved me wrong on a course that doesn't fit his game at all, which makes me think that he is absolutely in play this week, dialed in right now. Thomas Pieters really showed up last week, and that scares me because Pieters is known for being inconsistent. Now, he's also known for being streaky, so maybe that, maybe that's good, but he's either at the top or he's missing the cut. He's not a T40 kind of guy. He's not going to do that for you, I don't think. I think he's either in the top 10 or he misses the cut. I don't really see too many in-betweens. His prices on FanDuel and DraftKings are still too low, I would think, given that, how well he played last week, but also they're pretty reasonable considering who Thomas Pieters is and his odds. So, if I had to play 3 guys in this range, I'd play 3 of these 4 in probably a cash lineup. I'm just not sure which 3. Kind of depends on salary, I think. But I think Pieters is the most volatile of them. If I'm being dead honest, I think he's going to get really popular, and he has some concerns. He's not a great putter. He lacks overall major experience, but he performed well at the Open, another course that I didn't think would fit him, and he performed very well at the Masters. If you remember that, I think he top 5'd at the Masters. But off the tee, he is a bomber, but a lot of Pieters' bad stats come from tournaments way back in like May and April because those are his PGA Tour events. But last week in a loaded field in a pretty similar course, Pieters really was dialed in, and that makes me like him a lot this week. Louis, I think Louis is injured too this week, I heard someone say, so I'm going to put the red on him. I'm not a big fan of Louis this week, especially with these other guys in this range. I think Charles could perform really well here, and he will go under owned because of these other guys in this range. Charles' putter has been carrying him recently, but I think the rest of his game is coming around a little bit. He can get the ball out there. My worry is that he may not keep improving as he has been in the past few weeks, and he may just kind of stagnate a little bit. Last week I was big on Charles given course history and some recent form, but didn't really come through for me. He had a solid week, but it wasn't a great week. So, does Charles make the cut? I think so, but, I'm not really dead sold on Charles this week as a play. I like him, though. JB Holmes is a guy that is very volatile, has not performed well the past 2 weeks. And you see that volatility in his course history. I probably just won't be playing JB this week, and I'll hope he has a bad week. And I'll be eating the chalk on some of these other guys. I don't mind if you play JB, though. He definitely has the upside, and the odds makers like him. Fitzpatrick. Sorry. Fitzpatrick's going to be a fade for me this week. I just don't think he sets up this course well at all. And he hasn't really shown that he can, really win on these, really compete at these stacked fields. Henley burned me last week. Fuck that guy. Not playing him again. Bubba had good course history here at one point, and now he doesn't. Bubba's an interesting case this week. He played pretty well at the Bridgestone last week, but if I'm not mistaken, Bubba always tends to play pretty well at the Bridgestone. It's just a long course that fits his eye. This is another course where Bubba can play or fit his shots to the course. My issues with Bubba are that he's just not been great with his longer irons this year, and he just hasn't really been himself. So I'm not finding myself needing to play Bubba over a guy like Charlie Hoffman, who's in way better form overall right now. So I'll probably just fade Bubba and hope for the best there, or the worst, I should say. Patrick Reed, another guy that just hasn't been playing great recently, so I'm probably just going to fade him. And the problem with Patrick Reed is he'll probably finish 40th or 50th, right? But I don't see him competing here. I mean, I could be wrong. Could be like Jimmy Walker last year, very solid PGA Tour player. We kind of know who he is, but nobody saw Jimmy Walker winning the PGA Championship. That wasn't the chalk play of the week, So Patrick Reed in play, but I don't see the upside, and I'm probably just going to fade him. Brendan Steele, I think, is going to go under the radar, and I really like him this week, actually. He's played really well at this course in the past, especially in the last 2 years when he's really found his game. This year is his best season on tour. Now, Steele recently is crushing it off the tee. His approach game has been all right, but it's mostly a course history thing where he's shown that he can compete here in the past, and I like that. 5,500 on FanDuel is too cheap. And I may end up playing him in cash over there as my 8th of 8, as a course history angle play. Ryan Moore doesn't fit here at all. I'm not going to play Ryan Moore. His results have been good or awful here, and I just don't see him competing here this week. I'm just going to leave Ryan Moore. Lovemark is a guy that I think could compete here, but his approach game has been really bad, and he's bad with his long irons. So I'm not going to be on Lovemark too much. RCB, another guy that I'm not going to be on too much. He performed well for us at the Open and then went to the Bridgestone. Totally different kind of course and sucked. Now, I'm just going to be off. Kyle Stanley, great ball striker. We know who this guy is. Problem is it's a major, and Kyle Stanley in a major, you need a better all-around game to compete on these kind of courses. Great par 4 scorer, but the rest of his game not really fitting this course, and he's kind of trailed off a little bit since his victory. It's to be expected, but if I'm playing a guy in this range in a major, it's probably not him. Siwoo Kim, very volatile, could go in, sure, why not? But he probably misses the cut this week. Not going to be on him at all. Kevin Chappell, guy I love this week. I love me some Kevin Chappell. I love Chappell and I love Finau. I love Chappell this week. He's really rounding into form. He replaced his new irons with his old irons, meaning he went back to what he was comfortable with instead of something that his sponsor was probably getting him to try. So his approach game off the tee has been good. Driving distance, proximity 200 plus. All these stats line up so well for Chappell this week. I think he's good for a made cut this week for sure. Tony Finau. That FanDuel price, by the way, $6,000. You're playing him in cash. Tony Finau. $7K on both sides. FanDuel is too much. DraftKings probably too cheap. I like Finau's overall game this week here. He's played well at this course in the past. It feels weird wanting to play Tony Finau at a major, but if there's one that he could really compete at and win, I think it's a PGA Championship. I don't see him. This is probably a good venue for him. He's played well here before. 80-1, 70-1 for Chappell. I like those prices. Those are the two guys you're going to want, I think, at the 7K range. Kisner's interesting, but he's trailed off recently, and he's been inconsistent at this course, so I'm not going to be on him too much. I'll be overweight on Chappell and Finau. Poulter, been playing really well recently, but again, he's not a long hitter, which I think is going to make him struggle a little bit here. He's performed well here in the past, but that was a long time ago. Um, I just don't know if his game sets up really well for this course. Kind of in the Stenson and Kuchar mold. The X-Man, Xander Schauffele. What a rookie season this guy's having. I mean, he's showing up everywhere on all sorts of leaderboards with tons of world-class players around him. I think he's Rookie of the Year. So, but he fits the course pretty well. He hits the ball a long ways, and his approach game has been solid. My issue is that he's not the best long iron player, and he's never played this course before. I mean, Xander's never played a lot of courses before, let's be honest. But if I'm playing a guy in cash, it's going to be Chappell. It's going to be Finau. Then it's going to be Xander. I don't see a reason to play all three of them. It could be like the U.S. Open where Xander goes super low owned, but and then 6,200 on FanDuel. I'd rather just play Chappell. So there's that. Xander's definitely in play though. GPP only for me, just because it's his rookie season and he's been riding a heater for a while, so I'm a little worried that was a little putter based. His putting is hot besides these Bermuda events that I have listed, so maybe he struggles this week on Bermuda, a little different surface than what he's been putting on. Griot, I'm not going to be on this week. I hope people play him. I don't think he fits well at all here, and I see no upside. Wiesberger, I think, could play really well here, but I'm not going to be on him either just because he just hasn't. He's been trailing off recently since he ran on a heater in the middle of the spring-summer season. Thorbjorn Olesen, he's been all right recently, but I'm not going to be on him. Glover, guy I like this week. He's going to go really under the radar at 7K. He has great course history. And he has a win here, actually. A lot of these stats indicate, are at least on reference to courses that Glover has never played well at before, or were on greens or bent grass. Glover on bent grass is a disaster. He can't putt on bent grass, for whatever reason that is. So that's why I included the Bermuda stats, so you can find guys like Glover who do putt well on Bermuda grass. You remember at the beginning of the season, very, very far back in the spring and late winter, we were playing Lucas Glover in cash because Lucas Glover can putt on Bermuda. Now, Lucas Glover on bent grass, disaster all summer, so we didn't play it. We can get back on him here, and he made 2 of the last 2 cuts, so I like to see that. Wes Bryant, guy, he's not a long hitter, and I'm not really going to be on him at all this week. Hudson Swafford, a longer hitter. I think Hudson Swafford has a chance to do well this week. He could fly really under the radar. 4,800 on FanDuel. If you really want a big punt, I think he might be your guy. I'll have to go back and look at how his recent form has really been trending. I know he played well, I think, at the Canadian Open. Haven't really been fully on Swafford, but I think he could do well here. Jimmy Walker, defending PGA Championship winner, he played really well last week, and then he trailed off on the weekend. I don't like to see that. I like to see a guy like Hideki come through on the weekend. But I just don't think Jimmy Walker lines up too well here, so I'm just kind of going to fade him and hope for a miscut. I mean, his proximity 200 plus has been stellar, but he still hasn't been scoring overall. His putting around the green, his short game hasn't been there. Off the tee hasn't been great. He's not the longest hitter, so I don't know what to do with Jimmy, but I probably won't be having much of him this week. I think he's just kind of a weird price where I like guys more in this range around him. Harmon, very cheap on FanDuel, I will say that. Not a long hitter, but I just don't think he lines up that well here. I know he has a 10th place finish here, but I mean, those are in much weaker fields, and I don't know what to make of Harmon this week. I'm probably just not going to be playing him. He's kind of trailed off since he was on a heater. Been on a ball striker that could do decently well here. He tends to make cuts, but his putting is bad. His proximity 200 plus has also been pretty bad. So I think on these longer courses, maybe he tends to struggle a bit. So I'm not really gonna be on him either. Patrick Cantlay, really interesting this week. A guy that doesn't play too often, but Bomber could do really well here. Westwood, not going to be on him. Bad form, not going there. Shane Lowry, another guy that I don't know what to do with this guy. He looks like he could fit well here, but I'm not going to be on him. James Hahn, a guy who has a win at this course, but he also has 3 really not great finishes. So I think he just kind of got hot. I'm gonna avoid James Hahn just because I don't really see a need to take a guy that has he's won here before. Well, great, guys win tournaments all the time. They will never win again. Like Billy Hurley is not winning the AT&T National or whatever you want to call it at TPC Potomac anymore. Like he's not gonna win that tournament again. And that's kind of what I see with James Hahn here. James Hahn, better player than Billy Hurley, but I don't see him winning this week. And then I'm only going to go through the guys that I want to talk about here. Zach Johnson, I think, is a lock and load in cash games this week on both sites. I mean, it's a major and it's Zach Johnson. He's been hot as hell recently. Bill Haas, his father-in-law is a member here, so he's played this course a bunch. Lines up decently well, but his form at this course has trailed off in the last 5 years a lot. I mean, so he played really well here back, 2011, 2007, but I just don't really see a reason to have to go play Bill Haas this week. He just doesn't pop for me that much. Webb Simpson is a guy that I find really interesting this week. Because he's popped well at this course before. He's a member here, but he doesn't line up that well. Proximity is great, 200 yards, but the rest of his stats kind of middle of the pack, so I don't really want to chance it with him. I think he's in play for cash, but I'd be careful. I'm trying to only play ZJ in cash, and then if I need another guy in cash, I'd rather get a better course fit with a guy like Chappell or Finau. Molinari, a lot of these stats are inflated from when he was on that heater on the PGA Tour. He's kind of trailed off a little since then. He's played well at this course in the past. I think he lines up well here. He can get the ball in play and get it at the green. His problem is putting, but I think he has a chance to do really well here again. I think a top 30 might be in the cards for him, but I don't see myself rostering him in cash just because if he was in the form that he was in earlier in the year, I would definitely be on him, but he's kind of trailed off a bit recently. That worries me. Haotong Lee, the darling of the Open, won somebody $1 million. Good for him. But Haotong Lee, I think, might get some hype from the Open. I'm just not going to be on him. Keegan Bradley is a guy that I think you can play in GPPs this week. Keegan is never a cash play unless it's at the Greenbrier or TPC River Highlands. Those are the only 2 courses you play Keegan in cash. These are the rules, people. But you see off the tee approach around the green, he's been great recently. He's been great at these par 4s and par 3s that we want to see. 2 miscuts here. I'm not going to weigh those too heavily against him. But yeah, I think Keegan's in play for GPPs. He's obviously a risky play, as he always is. Adam Hadwin, a guy that played really well for a while last week, and I did not understand how he was doing it. But hey, if you want to play Adam Hadwin this week, try to ride that hand. I don't blame you. Patrick Rogers, a guy that has a second place here to miscut. He's like Justin Thomas here at this course. I'm not going to be on Patrick Rogers at all this week. I just really don't rate him overall as like a world-class player. Steve Stricker, I think, in play in cash. Yeah, I mean, the dude doesn't miss cuts at majors. My problem is I just don't know what Steve Stricker brings to the table at a course like this. I mean, I mean, he brings great putting and a great short game, but that's not going to get into the top, and that worries me. So, I mean, maybe Stricker makes the cut here and just kind of hangs around, but I honestly have trouble seeing him really compete here. He doesn't have to really compete, I guess, in cash, but I mean, you're still paying 6,500 for him on FanDuel. You can get Charlie Hoffman. Just take Charlie Hoffman. Thing with Stricker too is a lot of these stats are inflated from TPC Deer Run, which is like, Steve Stricker's stomping grounds. And then the tournaments that he played earlier in the year. He's basically been hand-picking tournaments that he wants to play, and the data from those are in here. I just think this course is a little different. He could perform really well here, but he doesn't have the distance. Especially if it rains. I think that's going to be a problem for him. Andy Sullivan, played him in the Open. Played him in cash at the Open. That was a bold move, but don't like him at all this week. Duffner could play well here this week. I don't know what to expect from him. He's been inconsistent recently. I'll probably just not be going there. Gary Woodland's another guy just like Duffner, where inconsistent recently. His putting has been god awful. Like if he just putted decently at the Canadian, he wins. So there's that. And his course history here is very good. My issue with Woodland is just kind of his short game and where his overall game is right now. His short game is holding him back so much, so consistently, that I have a hard time believing that he'll overcome that this week. And I mean, this FanDuel price isn't necessarily great, and I don't see myself dropping to 6,700 in cash on DK. Zach Johnson will be my lower range guy. So that's that. Any of these guys that I want to talk about? Ross Fisher has good course history. You can take a punt on him. Danny Lee has very good course history too. You can take a punt on him. Summerhays, Perez, O'Hare. I don't mind punts on any of these guys. But again, you don't want to go overweight on them. These are guys that you want to sprinkle in your lineups and hope that they're that guy that finishes T10, and gets you to the top of the GPPs. So I'll make some lineups with these guys, but I can guarantee you won't be many. And I'll go relatively chalky around them just so I can kind of, even if they miss the cut, maybe I still cash a 5 or 6, and take, double my money and move on. Best case scenario. Ty Hatton, Bud Cauley, you can play those guys too. Lingmer's off my radar completely. Colsart is a bomber if you want to play him. Ryan Fox, another bomber. Euro Tour guys that nobody's going to play. You want to play them. Charles Howell III, I've seen a lot of talk about him. I just don't like the guy very much as a player. In an event like this where the field is so strong. I mean, on the PGA Tour generally, he's known as a cut maker, but not an upside guy. Kind of shows here in his course history, and when you add, 10 to 15 world-class players that may not be normally playing this event into the field, with major incentive on the line, I don't see Charles Howell going out there and competing, really. And it's not like Charles Howell's been without faults here at this course. His par 4 and par 5 scoring has been great. I just don't see much reason to go that. I mean, you could take a 6,400 flyer if you love the rest of your lineup. Furyk's course history also very good, but he's trailed off here in the past 2 years. Distance is obvious. He's the shortest hitter on tour. It's not even close. And that's going to really hold him back this week, I think. So that's all this week. Drank some Great Lakes Elliott Ness this week on the show. Some amber lager action from Great Lakes Brewing Company. Great beer. Great fucking beer. If you haven't had it, man, you really need to. One of the best lagers, I think, that's out there. So, cheers, and good luck this week.